Freeman, and it's incomplete. Or did he make the catch at the 15? Yeah. What are they going to rule it? He caught it? Touchdown! He did what?
In the end zone, it is caught for the win! Richard Rodgers with a walk-off touchdown. Total disbelief at Ford Field.
Rushes on, has time. Looking, throws, middle, got it there! Breaking free to the 50. He may go all the way to the 20 down the right side. And there's Randall Cobb to the 5, to the end zone, to the touchdown. Oh my goodness!
Hey everybody, welcome to the Green and Golden Boys podcast, the Green Bay Packers podcast for fans living in enemy territory. I am Marcus, and with me is my co-host Charles.
Heyo.
Heyo. Charles, that seems like a little less enthusiastic of a heyo than I think I need from you today. Can I get another one from you?
We're going to have to
Better.
turn that down.
Woo! Yeah, sorry everybody.
First
Anybody
seed,
listening on
baby.
headphones or... Yeah. First seed, number one seed in the NFC for the
Bears still
first
suck.
time.
The Bears still suck.
Bears still suck. For the second time in Arron Rodgers' career as a Green Bay Packer, the Packers are the number one seed. We all remember 2011 where we lost in the divisional round. I believe it was to the Giants. I think hopefully things are going to be a lot different this time around. Obviously, home field advantage feels a little bit different this year with I shouldn't say no fans, with barely any fans in the stands. Arron Rodgers said as much in his press conference, talking about how much he misses the fans. And, it's been a special season, but they feel like they haven't been able to share it with the fans like they normally would. But that said, the road to the Super Bowl runs through Green Bay, Wisconsin in the month of January. So it's about as good of a result as we could have expected. The Packers made a few mistakes, during this game, but a pretty solid game from front to back by, well, I was going to say in all phases, but again, a couple of special team snafus. Why don't we talk first about what they did well in this game? What were your takeaways from this? What were the positives from the Packers?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious, positive is just like Tennessee, we pretty much dominated the game. You and I were texting, of course, during the game, and we both kind of agreed that there were essentially three plays that we could talk about, next segment or this next segment and what we can improve upon. But there are really only three plays that kept this game from being a complete blowout. It ended up being, a pretty lopsided game no matter what. But, Arron was seeing the field well. He was not focusing in on Devontae. MVS had a touchdown. Tunyon had a touchdown pass or catch, excuse me. And I think, again, everything offensively looked great, whether it was the passing game, the running game. Our offensive line, minus David Bakhtiari, still looked great. I think Arron got sacked one time. Just like Tennessee, you can't be too upset of what you saw on the field here on the road in a divisional game where both teams needed the win. I thought just all around fantastic game.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And there, again, to your point, there were a couple plays that we'll talk about here in a little bit that could have made a little bit of a difference. But, really well played game. I think, we were both nervous about this pass rush going into this game. Obviously, we did our Thursday episode a little bit early. We recorded that on Wednesday, I believe, or maybe even Tuesday, I forget. But obviously, the horrible news of David Bakhtiari going down, we didn't get a chance to address that at all before this game. That's going to be a huge loss for the Green Bay Packers. But, the offensive line played pretty dang well. I mean, you gotta take your hat off to guys like Billy Turner and Eldon Jenkins and Corey Linsley, and just being able to pull together, become kind of this cohesive unit, despite the fact that they're all having to shuffle around seemingly every week. So what a great performance by them. I think Rodgers was only sacked twice during this game, if I recall correctly.
I think once.
Was it only once?
Yeah, I think just once.
Okay. Well, even better. And that play, he was scrambling for like 4 seconds, so it's kind of, that's difficult to block for any line.
Yeah. Yep.
Alone.
It was good coverage downfield where it was basically a coverage sack. So I mean, again, you can't really put that on the offensive line.
No, but Aaron Rodgers had a pretty stellar game. He starts the game 10 for 10 with a perfect passer rating. His first incompletion, and we'll talk about this again in a second, it was that long ball to MVS that he just dropped.
Ugh.
Other than a couple of those, Aaron Rodgers played really dang well. I mean, he didn't have a ton of yards, 240 in this game, but near perfection from a completion standpoint. And threw for 4 touchdowns. His most touchdowns in a season with 48. The MVP is all but wrapped up. I don't understand anyone who thinks he doesn't deserve it at this point. But this is a sidebar. But do you think if he doesn't win the MVP, that adds fuel to the fire, or has no impact?
I want to say it's going to add fuel to the fire. I feel like I don't know. Aaron Rodgers is already known, I feel like, as, if not the greatest quarterback, maybe behind Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback. It's all about Super Bowls for him, I feel like, at this point, right? I mean, another MVP would obviously be a huge honor, something he'll take, something he'll retire with, of course. But, God, he really needs that second Super Bowl. So I think right now he's got one goal in mind.
Yeah. And I think if he were to not get an MVP again, I think he would just look back and be like, man, how did I not have more MVPs or as many MVPs as Brett Favre? But anyway, a sidebar. We'll table that for now.
Yeah. We have a bye, Marcus. We have a bye, so we have tons of time to do episodes on who got Pro Ball, Pro Ballers this week, or last week I think they were announced, who got snubbed, how many MVPs Aaron Rodgers really deserved. We have so much time on our hands right now.
We do, because obviously the Packers aren't going to play this week, and we don't have a preview to do. But maybe we'll do a playoff preview episode and talk about the possible scenarios that the Packers are going to face in 2 weeks. But let's talk a little bit about this defense. The defense has been ascending. The last 6 games or so, been playing really good football. Our defensive backs seem like they're flying around. Kevin King likes to do these Superman dives that he likes to call tackles. I don't know if you saw there's a Simpsons meme with Ralph Wiggum just headfirst diving through a window, and it says Kevin King when he tackles. But he had a better game than he's had in the last couple. Made some big tackles and some key stops, but he let a couple of opportunities get by him again. I feel like he's had a dozen or so chances this year at legitimate interceptions and just hasn't been able to reel those in, which is frustrating. But at the end of the day, if he can tackle and make some solid defense passes, I guess is the word, then that's really all we can ask from him.
Yeah,
Adrian Amos, and go ahead.
I'm Kevin. I started out that game. He had 2 big breakups that I'm like, okay, let's go, Kevin. But I do think if I'm down on anyone, and again, you're right, everyone's ascending right now. We could talk a lot of good things that this defense did this last week. Kevin, just to your point, some of those missed tackles, missed interceptions, is frustrating, especially that the interception this week in particular, right? Where there's a lot of times we're like, oh, he probably should have had that. But it just kind of felt like he gave up and he's just kind of almost being like screened, like a hockey goalie or something. He just didn't see the ball coming and he reacted as it was hitting his like kneecap essentially. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You got to get that.
I mean, and that could have been the case. He did look like a goalie trying to drop when a puck gets deflected down towards his 5-hole there. But
yeah.
But yeah. And then, again, the defense played really well. Pretty solid tackling for the most part. Obviously, there were a couple of opportunities where David Montgomery slipped 2 or 3 tackles, but pretty good for the most part. And I like that they challenged Mitchell Trubisky to beat them downfield. I mean, he had a lot of completions in this game, but they were all short passes. He, aside from that one, and I want to say it was Adrian Amos or Donnell Savage in coverage, he had that one, 35-yard bomb where I forget who was on defense. Do you remember that play? But whoever it was had a break on the ball and had an opportunity to knock that one away, but just didn't look like he put his arms up to make a play on the ball. He just kind of dove for the tackle after the catch was made. So
Yeah,
but other than that,
that was a weird angle or something, because you're right. It felt like we almost, like, Trubisky undershot it by a half yard. And that Mooney character for the Bears just still had to make an unbelievable catch to get there. And to think you're going to not allow any of those, right? And the announcers are like, oh, they haven't had any plays for more than 7 or 8 yards up until that point. It's like, eventually, regardless of how good or bad you are, they're going to make one of those plays throughout the period of a game, right?
Mm-hmm. All right, well, let me just finish the defense talk up by saying that the last 4 games the Bears have been pretty stellar on offense, and their defense is solid too. I want to say a top 6 defense in the league. They've been allowing only 21 points per game. Packers put up 35.
Yeah, and what I would say on that is when you're like the eye tag. This week was weird. Like, it almost felt to me that the Packers did not pass the eye test, right? But then when you look back at the stats and you realize how well we did in the red zone, you're like, holy shit, like, we did really well, right? Like, for example, Chicago held the ball, for more than 11 minutes more than Green Bay. So Chicago did exactly what they wanted to do to us, right? David Montgomery had a pretty good job in terms of total yards on us. But then when you look back at what actually, happened at the end of the game, we gave up 16 points, right? I think they had 5 trips to the red zone and only came out with 1 touchdown. The rest we were held to field goals. I mean, this game was the definition of bend, don't break. There were so many times where it was just like, come on, guys, can we just get off the field? But then ultimately we only ended up giving 3 points anyway. So it was, like I said, the ultimate definition of bend but don't break. So you can't be too upset with that performance.
No, for sure, and that's a great point. Why don't we pivot to maybe some things that need improvement? And I want to start with the special teams play. Obviously, the first play of the game wasn't, it was 2 feet away from being a fine kick into the end zone. But then Cordero Patterson steps out of bounds, catches the ball, and the Bears get that on the 40-yard line. A play that I think we saw Randall Cobb do back in the day, to some other teams. But great heads-up play by him. Obviously, kind of a snafu on the kickoff. You don't want to be putting it that close to the sideline.
What did you think? Did you think he was out of bounds?
No. I think or what I should say is I think he touched the ball first before he went out of bounds.
Yes.
But I
agree.
The refs disagree. They showed us every angle, presumably. So, I'm not sure what they were looking at, but it definitely looked from that one angle where you see his hand move that his foot is still about an inch in bounds. So whatever, it is what it is. Yep. Oh, and on that note, this was one of those games where I felt like the Bears got a lot of calls. Like I'm watching this game thinking, okay, for all the people who think Packers get all the calls, like some of these calls are really in huge favor for the Bears. But anyways, that being one of them.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, I think we got that turnover. Their tight end, what's his name, Clement or whatever. I think he was down too before that ball popped out. Yeah,
that could have been. It looked like that one could have gone either way, but maybe we got one there too.
Anyway,
obviously,
special teams.
Yeah, special teams. Obviously, the big one being that fumble on that punt return. So you can't have that.
Tavon.
I mean, you got one job. Hang on to the football.
You could see Aaron shaking his head, kind of like he did, a couple years back when Ty Montgomery, brought that ball out against the Rams. Instead of letting Arron Rodgers, take us down the field and win. He just had that like, really, guys, really. And to me, that shot didn't even look like a haymaker, right? It felt like that's a normal shot that you're going to take. But it's frustrating. I think we would be able to look beyond a fumble if it weren't for the fact that it was on a punt return, right? Like if Tavon Austin would have dropped it on a route, after catching a 5-yard out pass from Aaron, we'd be like, you know what? Okay, fumbles happen, it's fine. But for it to just be a special teams scenario again, I think was our main frustration.
Yeah, and then I totally understand when a player wants to push for an extra 2 or 3 yards after contact. I totally understand, but on a punt return, that that ball security's got to be your first and foremost. That's got to be your mentality. You can't just sit there and churn your legs for 30 seconds hoping to get 2 more yards, because that gives 3, 4, 5 defenders coming in an opportunity to punch the ball out. This one was obviously more so on that, on that big hit. It wasn't really